This is Big Man Tyrone, and you're about to watch the MTG Cabal cast with your hosts, Woad, Thirsty, and Reptar. Sub to us on all your podcast networks at MTG Cabal Cast and YouTube.
Alrighty, folks, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal cast. We've got some quick hits for you and a more diverse topic. More in-depth topic after that. Our quick hits are going to be BNR. It happened today. We're going to keep it short, simple, to the point. Neither of us has spoken to each other about our opinions on this. We just set it up as BNR's here. Let's give 2-minute quick hit and then move on to the delay in organized play and what that means for Magic going back to exclusively a digital-only, absolutely no LGS format. So, let's get it taken away with our quick takes on the BNR.
So, let me bring this up real quick. So, we had the BNR today. They hit all the formats they said they would. And it doesn't look terribly exciting.
No.
Newest to oldest, historic, they just banned a bunch of cards that they restricted. And then they restricted Burning Tree Emissary because, from what I've heard, people that play historic think this is a move to allow Gruul Aggro, the premier aggro deck, to kind of come up in the format, but then cut out Burning Tree Emissary to keep it from overtaking. This is the only format that Embercleave is good in right now, so sure, let it reign supreme. That's all I really know about that. Pioneer, people don't understand. Right now, the format seems to be 3 combo decks, in, Breach, Inverter, and I don't know the third. So Lotus Breach is what I mean by Breach, not Through the Breach. So Lotus Breach, Inverter, and Truth, which is affectionately been calling Splinter Twin, and whatever. And people see this as a move because it seems like WotC believes that the answer to combo is ramp, and that's traditionally not how that works. So again, a big old question mark. Modern cut at Arkham's Astrolabe, so that could either be a shot across the bow of Yorion. So things like Yorion Bant were kind of taking over on MODO in a control or combo shell, although it's hard to believe that Cat combo was really popping up on MODO because that deck takes infinite clicks and people weren't playing it in standard when it was available on MODO because of how many clicks it took.
Yeah.
It does... you can say that this is a shot at Uro as well, because those two cards generally went hand in hand alongside Yorion. And what happens here is just kind of a question mark. This hits Urza a little bit, but that deck fell away, so nobody's really sure why this happened in Modern, because it doesn't really change the metagame all that much. If Uro falls away, hooty-hoo, you go back to the format prior to Theros, and it doesn't change all that much. And then nobody understands Pauper.
I think the Mystic Sanctuary thing was necessary because it made Ghostly Flicker even better, but financially, pretty low impact on Pauper anyways. It's not like that's a huge financial driver.
Absolutely.
So what would be your quick take away financially from this?
From this, I would expect Uro to jump in price because of the lack of action in Modern, and possibly Urza again. Those two might come back, and there's a feeling that Blood Moon might make more of a showing and thus creep back up in value. When people have to rely more on non-basic lands as fixing, quote-unquote, instead of Astrolabe, then it allows cards like Blood Moon to kind of come back. So that's what I would expect first and foremost, and that's really the only format on this list I have a familiarity with. I've played a handful of Pauper, and I play the Inversion deck, the Tireless Tribe, flip its power, toughest, get you. That has nothing to do with this. It's a bad deck.
Yeah. I think, all aboard that historic train. We've got a Arena historic PTQ. I think Wizards has kind of said, well, we're not sure if we're going to kill Modern or Pioneer first, but whichever one of those gets killed, historic is going to be the new paper format, boys and girls. Let's ride that choo-choo into glory. Yep. I think Oath of Nissa is woefully misguided, and I think that Astrolabe should have been banned in Legacy. I think it may have been a typo that they banned it in Modern, but who knows?
I would agree.
Financially, I think you'll see stuff like Urza and Emery take a hit here because, those decks had kind of fallen out of favor, but one of the reasons they were even playable in Modern was because of cards like Astrolabe and Mopal. Turns out broken cards are still broken, so if they start tanking that bad, free pick them up.
Yep.
They will definitely recover.
Yes. There's a chance that Nykthos also sees a rise in price because of Oath. Those
Yeah.
two went hand in hand to start in the mono green ramp lists, and that's basically what Oath opens back up. That's
Yep.
what I would expect. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to Historic, so it's hard for me to say anything more than what I know, which is that Gruul Aggro is the premier deck, and they left Embercleave alone for a reason. So ride it.
Yep. I also, unrelated to this financially, there were an absurd number of vendors and various discussion groups that basically said, over the weekend they filled orders for multiple playsets of Oath of Nissa to pros, including, people from some large vendors saying that they had 500 placed in a single order that were shipped over the weekend. To people who were either known grinders or content creators or some association. So more accusations of insider trading, unregulated market, throwback to a previous episode. That's all I've got financially for the hot takes.
Yep.
Anything else from you?
No, not really. If you want to try and move it on Pauper, you can do that. The consensus is, as you mentioned, the Flicker deck, whatever you want to call it, is going to take over, but there's not a whole lot in that deck that's going to see a huge bump financially because it's all relatively new stuff. It's not like Mono Black Control is coming back, so buy into your oublies now kind of thing. So
yeah,
I don't know. This just doesn't seem to affect much financially. If they had made some more waves or been a little more targeted, then I think we might have actually seen some fallout financially.
Yeah, sure.
It just seems very middle of the road, very much let's try it and see what happens kind of stuff. This wasn't a ham-fisted banning or unbanning like we have seen before, so that's nice. It's just much like the non-action on Vintage for a full quarter. The silence on Standard and Legacy speaks volumes in the sense that they're just going to let these formats ride into the sunset. We're not going to see a Standard change until rotation, so your Shark Typhoons, your Vivians, your Nissas, into rotation are just going to hold because Wilderness Wreck is going nowhere. So
sure isn't.
That's what I got for that.
So, paper delay. I think this is huge.
Yep.
Obviously, we weren't getting large paper events. We knew that anyways. LGSs were going to be able to have pre-releases. Now they're not. Jumpstart isn't going to get a big release weekend. They're not going to have anything for it. So it's going to be basically, yet again, another seeming shortage of supply. It's incredibly interesting that, Marrow announced that Jumpstart is going to be a print-at-will product, which is great, except that I can't imagine there's going to be a ton of booster boxes that are going to be sold when you can't draft the format and the demand isn't necessarily there.
Yeah.
So I think especially for Jumpstart, this is huge.
Yeah. We don't know what the waves look like in terms of size based on when supply line issues came into play, but if there comes a point where this just kind of trickles out naturally, there's a really good chance that it just falls away as Jumpstart in particular as a kind of demand-driven product until the convention edition mystery boosters went up on eBay, which everybody knew was going to happen at some point. It seemed like interest in that product just began to wane outside of finance implications for what had already been opened, not the next print run.
Yeah.
It just seems like interest overall from people who don't own the product yet is just not there. So I'm kind of curious what happens with Jumpstart and whether it becomes worthwhile to try and buy in as a product to hold, kind of like a Masters product, or if you want to wait and see what they put in the Zendikar stuff and buy in there. So that's sealed implications immediately.
I also think it's worth noting that as everything has evolved, obviously WotC's response for the LGS level in terms of historic or in terms of paper has also been like let's try to give you some extra stuff, see how
Yes.
it goes for you, see if we can help you along the way. It'll be interesting to see if something like Jumpstart becomes one of those sets where they just ship them some free extra boxes like they did with mystery boosters, or if they even continue to do that.
Yeah.
Because we may not see that. It may just be mystery, and then it's like, all right, well, see you later, bye.
Correct. Yeah.
But I think that raises a number of questions about the product. One of, in terms of like actual supply, but I think, as you agreed, one of the most reliable things here is we're not going to have limited events, because historically, sets like Jumpstart, Battle Bond, Conspiracy, those are all draft-driven formats. Those are formats where you can fire drafts for months off of that product alone.
And that's generally what's going to move your product over a longer period of time rather than just having it on your shelf. As long as you have the events to remind people that, hey, this is a thing you should buy into because it's fun, you'll move that product.
Yeah, and here we're not getting that because we don't have the limited influence. It's also combined with the fact that, based on various factors, people may just not be able to afford boxes at this time, which could lead to fewer sales, which again, if you are backpacker, mid-level vendor, whatever, and you can get in with a local store, try to help them out. Hey, I'll buy boxes in bulk from you. Can you cut me a deal? Might not be the worst time to do that. I think that it's also telling that, and I don't think there's anything greater tinfoil hat going on here. We're seeing an emphasis on arena formats coming from Wizards at the same time. Play more historic. Look at these cool things we're doing. We're shaking the format up constantly while they're also kind of putting all the other formats on the back burner. And goes into the historic, I think, is either going to replace Modern or Pioneer. We'll see. And that's I think one of the important things to pay attention to as well. Not to mention, buy lists are going to be kind of rough for LGSs now again, because where do you get your singles from?
That's actually the more interesting thing. So, very importantly, you mentioned all these supplemental formats that are meant to be drafted and then sell over time based on the experience that people have with those draft events. Without this kind of event, Jumpstart kind of loses its allure in paper. So anybody who's looking for a lot of these cards for EDH, still probably not going to buy boxes. They're going to buy singles, which means paying inflated prices. People aren't just going to buy boxes to crack singles until the EV of the box raises above the price based on the secondary market, which is definitely something we could see happen. I actually wasn't sure if Jumpstart was going to be on Arena, and lo, it actually hits this Friday, July 16th. Or no, sorry. Yeah, this Friday, July 16th. So there will be eyes on this eyes on this product, because it's being released on Arena instead of MODO, which would be competing against Vintage Cube right now, or the fact that people still need to have a MODO account versus an Arena account.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's going to be enough to push people to try and buy boxes of a set that they have to draft in person and kind of put themselves and others at risk to do so. I've got a friend that's had 2 boxes of Battle Bond from before we went into... not Battle Bond, sorry. Mystery. From before we went into
Mystery,
lockdown.
Yeah.
They played it at the Grand Prix. One of the Grand Prix that released that had a blast and just came back and bought 2 from an LGS, and we have yet to be able to schedule a time for it because it requires 8 people, and that is a lot right now. Despite the fact that our state allows gatherings up to 75, 8 just seems still unrealistic because who knows who's been with.
It's hard to say.
And it's all just kind of part and parcel. And then pushing everything out into September just kind of piles on and exacerbates the issue. I really have no doubt that September is just WotC dragging their feet on the rest of 2020. There's nobody it doesn't seem like anybody that is optimistic that they're going to get paper events before the new year. Maybe FNMs in some states where the curve has been flattened and they feel like it's okay. WotC will push this through, but there are store owners that are also just kind of flying in the face of WotC and still having FNMs. We've been seeing this push through. This announcement was made late last week, and we've seen stores that say, F them, we're holding F&M. The only thing we will do at home is the Zendikar pre-release because they have told us that that is the way this will be done.
Yeah. And that's another thing that could create fallout, because, losing your sanctioning means one less spot, which, granted, depending where you are, you may only have one or two LGSs and that's it. Where I'm at in St. Louis, we're kind of spoiled. Even with all the closures over the last year, we're still sitting at about 20 stores within a 30-minute drive. But if you only have, like one or two, and one of them does this, all of a sudden, that's one less store with access where you can get singles. It's one less store where you can get sealed product. That's one less store where you have players. As we all know, sometimes players get alienated in one shop and then just go to another one and never come back. And if their store closes, they just may be gone. Yep. And losing that, they could potentially move to the kitchen table scene. They could potentially leave altogether, or they could potentially move back to the LGS. There's just a lot of uncertainty here, which to me goes back to, if you want to invest in the reserve list. Otherwise, hold on to it exactly long enough to turn it into money.
Yep.
But
no, it's absolutely right, and you have to look at this that kind of way where it does make sense to buy into Jumpstart, but only if you want to sit on the sealed product for enough time for it to mature and become worthwhile. It's not a product that you really want to invest in and try and flip for singles immediately. This is something that can definitely mature because of that, but it's based almost entirely on the situation at hand. If you come out of this in 2021 and there's a huge interest in Jumpstart and print to demand or print at will actually kicks in and they're able to print this alongside standard set, then everything kind of devalues for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, I think the place to look is Jumpstart, the green EDH thing, and possibly Zendikar, depending on what's going to come in the collector's stuff. And that's the finance implications of being out until September. That's EDH, EDH, and the reserve list.
Pretty much. And I think that, it's kind of... You may see an opportunity in Secret Lairs if we get more. Who knows what Wizards is doing with those. I think this has definitely made the Chandra spellbook basically a non-starter.
Yeah.
At least short term. Long term, maybe we'll see. But I know for a fact there's still some sitting in the Southern warehouse that shops just declined.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because they didn't see a reason, because they're not going to have enough people.
My store has Chandras, and I'm pretty sure they still have Gids. If I want to walk in and buy like 8 Gideons and some infinite number of Chandras, I can. But there's just nowhere to churn those cards. They're not bad, but they're meant to be played. Worship, Rest in Peace, Path to Exile, and Gideon. Those are more meant for constructed play than they are EDH. But Chandra's a little different. Like, you can look at Past in Flames, Torch of Defiance, and some of the other cards. Like, they are EDH playable, a little more so than what came in Gideon. But yeah, the rest of that spellbook is just a non-starter because there's no need, no interest.
Yeah. And I think that, it's... I'd actually kind of seen, at least locally, there'd been an uptick in people looking for singles because they were excited to get back to weeklies. There were stores that were like, well, we're going to fire Pioneer. We've got our 6-foot tables turned long ways. It sucks, but you're playing. And you'd started to see, at least locally, a little bit of more of a financial driver to it because of that. Because I had people coming to me saying, hey, I need XYZ cards for Standard Modern Pioneer. Can you see what you can get? And now, for those of you who are also backpackers locally, you're probably going to see that dry up.
Yeah.
If you've had that, it's going to go back to, I need, I don't know, Psychotog for my Dimir EDH discard deck.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's where you're at now.
Yeah.
And harkens back again to the point. EDH is continually the one format that continues to accrue value during all this.
Yep, the people are finding new and interesting ways to play EDH with each other. I've got two play groups I have that's 6 people total, including myself and my wife. And in one play group, the other 2 guys actually just jam EDH on camera throughout the rest of the week. Like, we play on Saturday as a group, and they just jam on webcam during the week for funsies. Like, This is what's happening now. This is the reality we live in. People are still looking for these cards. It's what's going to move. Nobody's going to be picking up Standard, one, because we're headed towards rotation, and two, we don't know when we're going to play it again in Paper. The same thing with Modern. It doesn't matter that format was more popular than Pioneer. Both of those formats are basically dead at this point until we actually can move back into the LGS and the the Magic Fests. Until we get that stuff back, everything just kind of dries up and fades away. And it feels bad, but that's just circumstance.
Yeah, and I think we're getting closer and closer to, like you said, people just recognizing and acknowledging, like, look, we're never getting this. Like, we're not getting Paper Magic this year again in a large scale event. You know, we're not going to get F&Ms anymore, and then maybe 2021 we do get those Mythic Fests. And until then, this is kind of where we're at.
I would expect at least Modern to rebound when we can. This isn't a time that I would divest from the format. We know what's coming out through the rest of the year, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, in 2021. So while Modern collections as a whole have been devalued over the last couple of months, it's more because the format is unplayable in Paper. It's not like the format isn't evolving and isn't playable on MODO. It's still firing all the time on MODO. It is still hugely popular. What you have to hope for is that once this is over and all those people that were playing Modern on MODO decide they're ready to play again, they actually come out and play Paper and kind of push that format, and WotC recognizes the format is still being played at the F&M level in Paper and gives us the Magic Fests and the Mythic Championships that we are supposed to get in Modern again moving forward. I don't think the format's dead. I think Pioneer is a lost cause at this point. Apparently the format has stopped firing. Todd Anderson and Sam Black, I believe, over the weekend basically verified that in a conversation they had back and forth. So that's a format that I'm not too worried about. I would look more to divest if Byleth's ever stabilized there. But coming out of this, sealed product's going to be interesting, and then I think the Magic market just goes back to what it was prior to Pioneer. Aside from EDH just being the place to be, the safest place to be, essentially.
Very true.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting.
Anything else?
No, I think the only other part that's kind of important to me about this is the last little headline in the announcement just says we'll update on a monthly basis starting in September. And the company I work for, we did our reviews every 4 to 6 weeks in our announcements of delay of when we would come back. And when we left in March, it was first going to be April, and then it was pushed out to June. Then as we got midway through May, it was pushed to September, and last week it was pushed to January 2021. Midway through January 2021 when we're supposed to come back. And I'm sure WotC says they have economists in place, which means people have been doing forecasting for the game itself, and I'm sure they have people watching what's going on within North America and LATAM.
Yeah. And
they see the same thing. So, as I mentioned earlier, I do believe they have an idea of when we're coming back. This last little blurb is to satisfy people with the idea that WotC is going to be delaying this a little bit and trying to give people hope that we will play Paper Magic again. But I don't think it's going to happen until 2021.
I don't either, and I think it's important that they don't outright disallow it.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right. I think they have to give people that hope, but I think they know when it's coming back, and I think they know it's going to be a while.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're going to have some experimentation stuff with small person events, much like Major League Sports are doing within the U.S., and they'll let players bow out of competition in exchange for an appearance at the next event of the same caliber. But I don't doubt they will test the waters with some of those small in-person arena tournaments, because people can still play those from home. Or from on-site but off-site. So if you only have your two competitors on main stage, but everybody else is playing back in their hotel rooms or, a video village, wherever, you can still run your events like that and kind of quarantine at the event itself. I do expect some kind of experimentation, and I believe that will be the signal that Paper Magic will come back. Once they can figure out how to do an in-person arena event, then we'll get Paper Magic Magic back officially.
Yeah.
But
And I'm honestly, the fact that I think it is telling that up until this point, they have not allowed for an in-person arena Mythic Fest, which was something that they'd done that was literally, if you look at the setup, already satisfied social distancing guidelines.
yes.
So the fact that we haven't put that up for consideration or anything, to me, much like you, tells me we're probably not going to get it.
Yep, agreed. So that's where I am, and that's kind of my takeaway. And I dislike that it happened so close to the episode where we talked about it initially, but I think it's very important to look at and analyze and think about moving forward, because this does, again, have widespread implications on how you handle yourself financially within this game, and what moves you want to make and what to watch out for, and how to speculate for the future of the game.
Yeah.
Not just the future of a format, so to speak. So
Very true.
that's the last little bit I have before we move into picks.
That's all I got, too. We're good.
All right. You want to go first with yours?
Yes, tying into the delay of Paper Magic, I am specifically highlighting something I picked prior, which is the alt art Japanese War Dovin. I am actually, on a broader sense, saying that any of those cards are very viable, because we're not getting Paper Magic. War is going to rotate, and we're not going to have any more of it until then. If you've been paying attention to standard prices, you've seen that a number of those cards not named Uro have started seeing a little bit of a depression in their price, because we're not playing any standard. Yep. So guess what? Prices are going to go down because there's less demand there with less Paper Magic. And aside from the EDH cards, you're not looking at a whole lot here.
No.
And I think that, we've basically come off an all-time low within the last couple weeks for Dovin.
It's hard to tell because there's no graph for the non-pre-release version of the Japanese promo. But if you're...
Yeah.
I have the English version up, which has what I assume is a similar price trend, which is exactly what you said, just trending down.
Yeah. And these cards are not coming back. The ones that are in demand, Nissa, Liliana, Karn, that stuff, and Karn has even dropped because, it's banned in pretty much everything. Those have been holding steady. Yet again, though, your low-hanging fruit has been just chugging right along as low-hanging fruit. And eventually people are going to start trying to collect these, and you're going to start seeing them be worth money.
Yeah.
And I think that, kind of like when I picked the Divert Invocation way back when, these low-hanging fruits are where you're going to make the most money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Margin-wise, because they're not... What are you going to do? Spend $5 on a bunch of them at a quarter a piece? Great. When you dump that same amount for $1 each...
That's exactly what it is. This is
free real estate.
This is the Theros temples all over again. The Theros temples rotated out of standard at a quarter a piece, but they were incredibly EDH playable, and EDH drove those cards to $1 a piece. It wasn't quite the fact that the blue-white and the black-blue one made it into Modern in the Adnaz deck, and I think the green-white one showed up somewhere that wasn't in Pioneer. That drove that price. No, that was EDH that put them there. And these are definitely EDH playable. And Dovin is one of, Dovin goes in a pillar deck. Grand Arbiter Augustine IV. That card. The Indomitable Stacks card. It fits in that deck. People play that deck. They like that deck. It absolutely has a home. And as you look through the rest of the supporting commanders, they all read the same for what this card does. It is playable in any of those decks. It is a taxing effect. It's something you want or need, and it's very easy to pick up at anywhere between a quarter and 50 cents each, and all day long if you can.
And it's also, Dovin specifically satisfies that fringe competitive when you first start branching out from casual EDH into something that's a bit more high-end spiky.
Yeah.
And I think that that's that's a niche I love personally, because I love CEDH. But even looking at some of the stuff like Kiora, those alt arts are just incredibly affordable right now. You don't have to go super deep. You can go wide and spend the same amount of money and get multiples of everyone instead of a bunch of one.
Oh, absolutely.
Just to increase your chances to hit, because these are just super low visibility right now.
Yeah.
Because no standard. And I think that what you'll see is a lot of this fringe collectible isn't really the right word, but a lot of these collectible targeted cards in current standard sets that are about to rotate, your alt arts, your full arts, whatever, those are going to fly under the radar until we get Paper Magic back again.
Yes.
And I think you could see movement after we get Paper Magic on them. So timeline-wise, probably looking at least 2021 on this stuff. So, don't buy a bunch of it if you're not super comfortable holding onto it for a long time. But you can at least spend $10-20, get a decent amount of this stuff, and sit on it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to find out, because I did something similar when I found out that about the uncommon planeswalkers, because I figured they would be super cheap. I'm trying to figure out how many I bought, but I went out and snow-covered lands. I don't know where it is, but I have an entire deck box full of the uncommon planeswalkers, English variant, just because they were pennies a piece, essentially, and there was no reason why any of them would be less than what I paid for them in the future, because they are uncommon planeswalkers. They would have a novelty to them in that sense, and despite the fact that they only have one ability, they were the first set of planeswalkers with passives, which were fairly important. So there are some clunkers in there, sure, like the Tybalt, just because you can pick on Tybalt all day long. Not that great, but...
Or Tybalt.
Yeah, I know, right? But you still have the Wanderer, you still have... Tomac is the white creature, but there's another white uncommon, like one white uncommon stops damage, you take damage dealt to you, the other one stops damage dealt to the planeswalker. And there are these just nicely templated planeswalkers that uncommon. And alt art English, I think both are extremely worthwhile. I agree with the reasoning more on the alt art than the English at this point, because alt art is drying up, but people don't seem to notice. So you can just be kind of sneaky and work below water, so to speak, and pick them up. And, as you mentioned, it's cheap. So why not?
It's just great. Yeah.
You don't need to go wide on all of them. You can go wide on the useful ones, for sure.
Yeah.
And still spend a couple bucks and come away with a nice haul for when those do, quad up. Or hextuple up to $2. Like, easy. My pick's a little more, not unique, maybe probably more robust, in the sense that it actually is a general. It's a Tashana, Voice of Thunder. It's a card I've been monitoring for about a month. It hit CK buy list, and there was a lot of hubbub about it a while ago, so I just kept some eyes on it until it hit some trend markers that I liked to see. So when I started monitoring this card in early June, CK was buying 24 at $1.60 each. They're still buying 24, but now they're $2.05 and $2.67 in credit. And the $1.60 had stayed the same up until this past Friday. Between Friday and this morning, this card has increased 40 cents in buy list value, but the number has stayed the same. Moreover, the other thing that I find, I guess, kind of interesting now was trending on TCG Player. The number of unique vendors have been dropping this entire time. In that time span, it went from, I think I have 89 down to 73. 86 to 79, but there was no restock. There's actually been a restock today. However, it looks to be in foreign language.
Yeah, there's Korean and Japanese that got added.
And those two are sitting at the bottom of the list. They are the cheapest. The interesting thing about this card that makes it kind of appealing to me is that this is a card that when you look at the EDH playability, it kind of straddles this line between purely casual pillow forty and extremely aggressive. And if you slide it into the kind of pillow forty deck, then you're going to look to draw your library and win with Thassa's Oracle or Laboratory Maniac and kind of play that game. And you don't need Time Spiral and Windfall and a lot of these other cards. You can play with like Keenan, Bonder Prodigy, the new Simic Mythic from Ikoria.
Yeah.
You can play with Tatiova, Benthic Druid from Dominaria, which basically has landfall draw card. You can just play this kind of like go mid-game and just push forward with your plan and not be too offensive until you all of a sudden win. If you want to turn the corner and be aggressive, there is a little more like Elfie kind of build where you just wind up winning with Natural Order and Craterhoof Behemoth.
Yeah.
And
the classic.
Exactly. And that version's a little more spiky. It can be more expensive if you want to play like the Cradle and everything else to go with that side of the deck. You also get, is it Edric, Spymaster of Trest, so you can, yeah, there he is. Let's bring this up. Whenever a creature deals combat damage, you draw cards. You know, there's a weird merfolk theme if you want to be kind of low-key about it, but it plays to kind of all spectrums of EDH. And you could even play Pillow Forty and just slam that Craterhoof and win with a handful of creatures. You don't have to be, you know, looking for the Deadeye Nav combo in here. You don't have to do that kind of stuff, Peregrine Drake or Palomcron, what have you. It's real. This is another EDH pick that kind of spans the gamut between competitive and casual. It is a card that does something that a lot of players love, which is not just Dirtle, but draw cards. Yep. And it pairs nicely with the draw card theme, be it in Simic or Mono Blue or a heavy green stint. And this is a card that just has not really seen a refill at all over the past month. It just keeps drying up. It is moving naturally. There is no forced movement on this, and it will just kind of just attrition out and be a $5+ card. I'd say closer to the winter rather than the fall, just because the movement overall in this card, and I'll bring up the stocks graph again, while positive and trending in a direction that we like, the slope is not great. I kind of discount the dip around core 21. That's a little anomalous because we didn't get a whole lot of product on the market for Tishana. It just, just whatever reason, the price just tanked. But you can see it's trending up towards $5, but it's going to be slow. It took almost an entire quarter to get from $2.40 to $3. You know, a 60-cent gain took 3 months. So I think between now and 2021 is when you want to move in. That's when it'll hit 5, and if it hits 5, there's probably nothing stopping it to move to 7, and then eventually 10. So this is a card that I would definitely pick up. It's sat in bulk as a bulk mythic for a while. You know, long enough. You look at the price graph, and it just sits there in ropes forever at like $1.50 up until last December. And then it starts slowly climbing. So this is something you should be able to find fairly easily, and you might be able to talk people down from the almost $3 price tag, closer towards $2.25 if you want to pick them up in bulk from somewhere. If you have a local or an LGS that has a bunch, and I think this is just a safe hold for a fair amount of time. So
I think it's also worth noting that it's from Ixalan, which was not a very popular product. So it's not something that people had a lot of opening.
Yeah.
So it's kind of dry on the market. And this card can be worth a lot of money. But I don't think, even when it hits $10, people are going to open Ixalan. It's still just not very popular. No. And I think that lends itself a lot of like long-term financial viability. It also, like you said, there's 3 things that to me make Simic the best color combination in Magic. Mm-hmm. Drawing all the cards, casting all the spells, taking all the turns. This card draws all the cards, and since you're drawing all the cards, you get to cast all the spells. And
because you're doing both of those, you can take all the turns. It's there.
Yeah. It very, very neatly satisfies all of those boxes that people who play Simic love. So I think this is a great one, and I think that you're probably right in terms of timeline, because this is such an EDH card. I think it could be winter or maybe even shorter, depending how play EDH tournaments and stuff go from here on out.
The other thing that I find interesting is that while there aren't a whole lot of foils on the market, there's 17, 20, 23 on TCG Player right now. Almost a quarter of them can be arbitraged to Card Kingdom if they were buying more than 2. Card Kingdom's only buying 2 foils of this card for $5.50 or $7.15 credit, which is awesome if you just want to drop shift 2 off TCG Player for about 5. You can pick up $2 credit. That's an easy 40%, bump off what's there. But 17 total at anywhere from, like I said, 5 to about 7 seems like an easy buy-in too. Maybe $40-ish clears the market if you were into that. Probably not a bad idea either. You can just stay low and go with the non-foils, or spend not even twice as much and get the foils. So up to you.
Definitely good though.
The choice is yours and yours alone.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think that's a pretty clean week for us. There's not a whole lot going on in terms of price movement. Standard is more of the same, and it's all on Arena. We haven't really seen any large historic events, so I think they're coming down the pike. I've got to look at the WotC schedule, and we might see some movement there if people begin moving on historic stuff. Otherwise, it's just hold your breath for Jumpstart this weekend and move in on some odds and ends if you can find them. So.
Yeah. But I think it'll be good. We'll see though. Yep.
If you get, I guess if you get a chance and you can draft it, go for it. Experience is supposed to be decent. Just wear a mask.
Yeah. I'm honestly, I'm kind of sad I'm not going to get to play the limited format, because it actually seemed like it was a ton of fun. Yep. But, yeah.
Yep.
Who knows?
Yeah, an alternative to Keyforge, which is also Richard Garfield created. Jumpstart looked like it was going to be promising, but, victim of circumstance. If they do it again, hopefully we'll be able to play it the second time round. So.
Yeah, that would be nice. We'll see,
Cheers to that. Otherwise, we are at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, on Patreon, on Facebook. I believe we are finally on YouTube under that name.
Yes.
I am at halt. I am Reptar on Twitter. You are
at Thirsty Sizzler on the Twitter.
And we'll see you guys next week.